And welcome to the Block 4 Unit 15. Today we'll look into how to look into the people and the processes which are a part of retail operations management. It's a very important part in terms of a very critical area of retail operations because on this hinges the profitability or how a retail operation can be considered a success or a failure. So, that being the scenario, we will look into how to manage people and processes within the retail uh, store. Now, if you remember the right from beginning when we talked about the introductory session of retailing, we talked about the brief scenario about the retail sector in India and abroad. In India, the critical thing is that we have organized retailing in its true sense for the last 2 decades or so. Before that, it was mostly like the typical unorganized retail sector. Unorganized retail sector still holds good in the Indian market, and organized retail, of course, is slowly gaining its footprint and is becoming more visible in the Indian scenario, in the Indian market. So, if you look into the what is the prospect for Indian retail, if you see, it is one of the most important or a fastest growing sectors in globally, and we are growing at almost at the rate of something like 8 9 to 10%. And if the any kind of figures, if you go by the particular figures, if we are trying to reach uh, 1.8 trillion dollars by 2030. We are still got 5 years to go, and that does tell you that where we are headed. As of now, when we're talking about it, it is a kind of a growing scenario. We are still learning. We are still on the learning curve, and when you talk about modern retailing or organized retailing, is yet to make its presence felt in its real sense. But yes, it has penetrated a market. Almost 12% of the retail operations in the Indian economy is still handled by the organized retail. Rest are all with the unorganized sector. So there are a lot of catching up that needs to be done. A lot of potential in the Indian retail market as far as organized retail is concerned. And if you look into that, that by itself gives you a sense that only organized retail is just about 1.8 trillion dollars, and put together, it could be much more. So let's dig into what makes the Indian market so exciting. And secondly, as far as the employment generation is concerned, you know that India's population is the number one in the world today. We have upset China, and we are the number one as far as the population is concerned. One of the critical areas which government looks into is what is the employment opportunity in the retail sector. It is the second best in the country. So you can say huge potential in terms of generating revenues, and then also it gives rise to a lot of startups, entrepreneurship, people who want to establish the small shops also. And today they are smitten by the organized retail bug, and they want to not to be just start a standalone store. They would like to learn from the current scenarios ecosystem and make it a very organized kind of an effort in the market. So we have already touched upon so many aspects of the organized retail. So they definitely are looking forward to those kind of investments, whether it is in the offline retail or in the online retail. Online retail is finding far more traction among the new age entrepreneurs. So we can expect a great, future ahead as far as the Indian retail is concerned. Now, if you look into the success of a retail sector, depends on the if you talk about the marketing strategy, we look into the marketing mix strategy. We look into something called the retail mix, which is almost similar to that of a service mix. You know, the marketing mix consists of the four basic marketing, which we call the four P's of marketing, which are called the pillars of marketing: the product, the price, the place, and promotion. But in addition to that, in service, because retailing is also like a service sector, we add on the three more P's to it, which are the physical evidence, people, and process, in addition to the four P's which we have already referred to. Now, this is very, very important because going forward, it becomes critical. We're looking to today's session is dedicated to understanding two of these additional P's, that is people and process, which is so critical in the service delivery process. Now, what is the retail? Just now I was giving you the retail mix elements, which are almost like the service mix. So you have all these seven P's which we consider under the retail mix, and it includes various aspects of services like how the people are interacting. When you look into the people part, that is where it is actually creating a differentiation from one retailer to the other, because most of the things can, to some extent, can be matched, but when it comes to people, it is almost difficult. So that's where you can look at why people are involved in giving the end services to the customer. So how you create the convenience which we promise to the customers, what kind of experiences do that between two stores, it all depends on the interaction that the customer has with the staff members or the manpower who are employed there. And of course, we look into the quality of engagement with the customers. And a lot of value driven, if you look at the value chain, the value which is perceived by the customer, the service mix elements along with the other P's, like the product and the price and the place, add up to the value proposition. So hence it becomes very critical to look into the these additional P's. So if you look at the what are the elements of a service mix, just now we talked about, everything gravitates, all these seven P's that we are talking about, the product that you are offering, or the product, here we say product, we're looking into both products and services, and what kind of price points at which we are looking at. We have looked at retail pricing strategies in the past sessions. We also looked into the space, the place where we are going to make it happen, what kind of distribution we need to have, whether it should be a omni-channel or it's a single stand outlets and all that. Then we looked into the promotional aspects, where we looked into what are the ways and means to communicate regarding the retail store, their products, what they are merchandising that they are having, and what price points they are offering to the consumers. Where we talked about a promotion mix elements, where we looked into both a mix of traditional as well as your digital components to effectively engage with the customers so that you can get a call to action. Then we looked at physical environment, where we looked into how to look into the space in which we are making the store available, how to create a convenience kind of or environment which basically serves as an attractive point. So we looked into visual merchandising, the store layouts, how they can be used to create more better experiences with the target customers. And of course, today we are looking at the people and the process. So as you know, what does people mean? So when you look into the people part, we will be guided by basically the three aspects of the story. So when we look into the people, let's look into, as I was telling you some time before, that everything, if you look at the retail mix, everything gravitates around or moves around target customers. This is nothing new, even that flows from the basic understanding of what marketing is. So retail mix is not anything different from that. But then all these seven P's, before we get into people and processes, all these seven P's have to get into a kind of a proper mix or an optimal mix in order to create the synergy to create better customer value. And of course, any retailer's competitive advantage would depend upon how they are strengthening their strengths and taking care of their weaknesses over their competition. Also, it gives you, when you look at the SWOT analysis, we also look into what kind of opportunities we can identify within the emerging scenarios and what could be the possible threats from the various the suppliers or the competitors in the marketing force. When you must have read about the five forces of Porter, competitive forces, where you can see perceived threats and we can look into that particular space. So these are three basic guiding principles which guide the retail mix elements. Now let's move to the one which we are talking in terms of the people. Now, people, why among all the resources like an organization can or a retailer also has, of course, products, infrastructure, store, other sundry items, right? Place, location, all those add up to the resource capabilities. But one of the critical resource is that of people. When we talk about people, we look into two two parameters. One are the employees who are working with the retailer. Secondly, are the customers who are being attracted or whom we are targeting to visit. Yes, there could be customers who walk in also without any. So that goes beyond that targeting. But at the same time, they are also an important part of our people. So when we talk about people, essentially we are looking into our target customers and the people which and our own staff members or employees of the retailer who are engaged in the service delivery process. And you know, both of them are very very crucial for the existence of a retailer. Employees, if you are short of employees, you will not be able to do much. Yes, you can, to some extent, you can make it in case of, you can outsource and can convert that into e-retailing. But even there also, you would require people to take care of those particular activities. Otherwise, the delivery process can get hampered and it may also ultimately impact the consumers because they are at the receiving end. So it's very important that what kind of an that's why employees have been in some marketing theory, the employees have been considered as internal customers, whereas the customers whom we are targeting are the external customers. Now both have to be taken up when we're looking into the marketing parameters, right? Now how do you effectively look into managing this is the crux. So essentially we will be talking in terms of mostly the employer's point of view when we're looking into people today as we go about that, when we look into how to train, how to recruit and how to manage them effectively so that the goals and achievements of the retailer is achieved. Now, the key to the success, primarily, essentially, obviously, there are various other things, but broadly, it can be looked into finding out the right kind of people, right? So, where would you go and source it out? So, for sourcing, what they do, they go for various, they can traditional methods are there, but there are also nowadays a lot of agencies have cropped up who like placement agencies. You can also pick up people from various institutes. If you want professional people, you have to go to the professional sources. Sometimes you want fresh candidates, so you have to go to the campuses of various colleges, depending upon your requirements, and can engage with them. So there is some amount of licensing that the HR of the retail outlet have to be involved in order to source their employees and bring them onto this. So finding is so all the rules when you talk in terms of selection, recruitment, onboarding process, all becomes a part of this particular effort. Going forward, if you look into it, it you have to ensure that your retail management creates an environment where there is a camaraderie, there is a very effective system. You must have seen a number of opportunities or stories about business successes. Business successes come primarily because, yes, of the leadership, definitely, but it has to flow down from the leadership to the grassroots level. Now, who are the grassroots level? These are the people who are at the bottom, who are sitting on the fence, and these are the people who are interacting with the end user. So team camaraderie, team spirit, and a cohesiveness has to be there. Now, when you talk about cohesiveness, obviously you have to ensure motivation. You have to create a kind of healthy competition among them. You also have to understand, empathize with their situation. You have to give the right kind of remuneration so that you can attract good talent. So, a lot of these factors need to be done as we do in case of an HR initiative and trying to look into an manpower planning. We are doing a manpower planning where we are trying to find out what are the requirements of manpower, then going for a search, then trying to we go through the selection and recruitment process, hiring them, negotiating their salaries, looking into the compensation packages. Are you providing the best in the industry, or at least what the industry charges, so that you don't lose these people to the competition. And once you bring them in, you'll also have to not only set targets and goals, but you'll also have to take them along. You have to train them. You have to, because they could be very raw. They may not be savvy with technology. So when you are setting goals and targets, you also have to set realistic goals and targets, and also help ensure that you have a very good, effective communication to ensure effectivity. You can have efficiency, but effectivity is what retailers should be looking at. So when you're talking about effective and calm communication, what we mean by calm communication is that you cannot be in a kind of a panic situation, because understand in one thing which you see, if you must have observed that many times during your shopping experience, you must have come across how these people deal with them. Many a times the dealing often goes to from a desirable to an undesirable. Ideally, it should be always be very courteous with a kind of a very congenial kind of an atmosphere. But many a times it may tip in favor of making things more acrimonious. As a result, what happens, or the person is the staff member is unable to handle the let's say a customer who is very angry, who is very agitated, who had very bad experiences. So a lot of things would go into how do you handle that. Now that also comes with a lot of experience and lot of maturity that the manpower needs to have. And mostly you'll find that in these kind of very new people could be inducted, or people of very young age, young boys and girls who are recruited into this. So they have a certain limitation also in terms of their anger management issues and things like that. So when we say calm communication, it looks very easy, but then at the same time, at the nick of the point, how do you ensure that? Do you have any processes? Do you take them forward? Do you make simulate situation? Do you create more training workshops where they know, okay, this is what is expected out of me, or this is what are the do's and the don'ts of interacting with the customers, right? When they should engage with the senior person, or can they handle on their own? There are certain limitations which are there. And secondly, what kind of a communication are they offering to the people? Are they able to convince the customer, not convince the customer? There are some people who are fantastic in terms of their communication skills. It's not necessarily they have to be speaking in the English language. They could be speaking in other. They should be conversant. Look at the air hostesses or the airlines. When we look into that, a larger segment of that depends upon how two airlines are all more or less the same. But what differentiates one set of people from the other is the way they are handled. Yes, you are charging for the service, but then point is, are those services are actually being rendered in a manner which makes you happy and the customers happy. And so retailers also have to create avenues to support, to understand where things are, and also to give benefits to these people, because until unless you are looking into a kind of a win-win situation where your manpower is also getting something in terms of their remuneration, in terms of their happiness quotient, in terms of the wellness factors. If you have got women employees, are you having maternity, paternity? A lot of HR policies are coming up, but are you aligning with them? Are you adopting them? Because this also creates a kind of a warm factor among the people that, okay, this is a desired place to work. When I look into a retail store, you find that, okay, their HR policies are much more attractive, so people would like to engage that, right? So if you look in a nutshell, it talks about how you get the right kind of set of people and how to train them, and looking into the vision of the retailer, how you create more better clarity and a a good environment, a positive work culture, which is aligned to a very cooperative kind of a group thing and a teamwork, which helps in not only in goal setting but also achievement of those goals. And wherever there are, obviously it's not going to be a journey which will have hiccups, it will have issues. So how are those getting handled? So conflict resolution are critical to make successes. However, all can be capsulated under the 5 C's, which we call as critical for any retailer to concentrate on to get into this. So first of all, creation. Creation deals with how to understand the vision of the company or the retailer, what they are into, why are they into it, and how did that mission of serving people really get into the engagement part, right? You create certain this also sets the kind of a tone, right? From what kind of a leadership you have, what kind of acquisition you are going to, what kind of talent you are going to acquire, what kind of value systems are you going to look into, what kind of, are you going for a very meritocracy kind of a thing? If you're getting very merit oriented people, are you giving them the right kind of compensation and so on and so forth? That is the critical part of the people management skill. Then comes the comprehension. Every person, every job requirement is not the same. So how's that being understood, and how you can calibrate and make rules or create benchmarks which will be more attractive, and you can comprehensively give a situation or a workplace environment where the ecosystem can flourish and can achieve the desired results. Here we also not only look into only the people skills, we also look into what kind of society, how do they engage with people, what kind of skill sets they have, and how you can really align to your requirements. All these things are looked into. Communication, I have already talked about communication, which is a very, very important with the organization culture. No two organizations have the same culture. One could be very, very traditional culture, one could be very modern culture, where you're talking about more, you expect a lot, expectations are very high. So obviously that needs to be those expectations which from the company side needs to be communicated. Also, they should also understand the expectation of the other side, the people who are there. As I told you, why would anybody come to you, right? They would look into your organization, your achievements, what kind of a brand image you have, what kind of a store image you have, what kind of people like working there, do you get enough kind of customer traction? So obviously they would also calibrate according to that. So a successful retail people management would talk in terms of how you are maintaining a communication within the system once they are coming on to you and making them aware. Collaboration would deal with definitely the both the internal and the external parameters, where you're talking in terms it's visible to the external people, where the manpower they have to understand, and they have to create a environment internally which actually is visible. Okay, fine, they are one strong team, they know what they are talking about. So there is a very good collaboration within the employees and the management, so that that is visible to people, so that you're not talking in two different ways. You're talking in the same page, you're on the same page, and you collaborate. Where you would say that okay, you are adding one to one to make it more synergistic in order to engage with the customer. Confronting, I think, which is today's world, is when you talk about confrontation, people have to understand they are a very flexible resource. Even after all this, you could miss out on people. People could leave your organization after getting successful training, and it has happened. You cannot stop anybody. No, if the labor laws are very, very stringent in terms of that, you cannot stop anybody from looking into a career growth, or you cannot have a hire and fire policy just like that. But how you deal with them can depend upon how you confront with the people in terms of what we call as the VUCA environment that you create, right? So this gives you a certain amount of understanding as to today's market is like any industry, retail industry also has a lot of challenges and opportunities are there. Now, how you basically come out of this? So there are 4 basic situations where you can talk about, where the VUCA stands for the volatility in the marketplace, the uncertainty that is there, and the complexity is there, and the ambiguity. Each one requires a different kind of skill sets to handle, because volatility is very unstable market. Today, we cannot say that things will be same as that. Look at what happened during COVID times. It was a very tough time in the retail industry where people had to be laid off. People had to be told, or there are some retailers say that okay, you stay at home but don't come. We will support you with your salaries. Now, not many firms would do that. So, how to handle that? You have to create a, a talent pool where you can, if you're looking from an HR perspective, if you're looking from people perspective, as I told you, today's attrition rates are very high in retail sector. Today, you have hired somebody, they may not be there after 1 month. So, what kind of checks and balances have you created so that, or what kind of policies have you created so that you can retain them? You can not only for that, but also for retention point of view, but also making them feel happy about it. So, attrition would be a parameter which you have to see, and of course, you have to look into the kind of fluctuations that is there, the demand functions which are taking place. Certain industries are going down, certain industries are coming up. So if you are into that retail space, your manpower requirements also has to be aligned to that, right? So you have to be prepared to take those kind of steps to see that yes, certain steps can be expensive, but some new things have to be adopted. For example, all the employees have to understand how the digital world works and how you can integrate into your offline things. So you have to create avenues for that. Uncertainties, I think everywhere you'll find uncertainties, and the more the competition comes, the more if you look into the future, you may have issues with respect to uncertainty. So how you're going to handle that, how you invest in it, and how you take your people along with it, engaging with the people, making them see things. There are people who have resistance to change, so those things have to be looked into. Complexities, business is a complex game. Let's understand that. And you're operating in a different market with different kind of people, the cultural parameters, the regulatory authorities. It could lead to various complications. So, are your people, are your the entire infrastructure that you are creating, including your manpower, are they in sync with the complexities? Both you have to look into in terms of what kind of resources you need to have, what kind of resources capabilities have to be looked into, and how do you allocate them so that it becomes your competency. Ambiguity, these are basically the unknown factors, the situational factors. So most of them you will have to keep on. These are uncalled for, so but you have to have a clarity. Going forward, you have to prepare plan A, B kind of scenarios with the people. So again, training comes in here. How to basically take care of the ambiguity part and bring in more clarity into them so that they can handle with ambiguity in a better manner as going forward. You cannot say no to any of these parameters. They all will be impacting the industry. But how do you take your people and resources in terms of, okay, you may find that in certain markets, a particular kind of store outlet or store layout may not be feasible, or it does not create the right kind of appeal. So you have to bring in those changes. So how do you read those parameters and build it under each of these buckets and classify them and take adequate approaches would depend upon the ground realities. You have to look into the how the emerging scenarios are happening, the industry life cycle maybe. Are they in the emerging market? Are they matured markets? Are they the growth market? So depending upon that, the VUCA parameters can significantly change, right? So it boils down to few things. Yes, how you can make it happen? All that we have talked about can talk in terms of okay, how do you manage the knowledge, skills, and attitudes? Obviously, everything has to be happen under a very dynamic leadership. If we talk about organized retail, it is a mandatory thing that you have to adopt new technologies, design thinking. Now, all that needs to be worked out at the leadership level and then slowly percolate down to at the middle and the grassroots levels. Building team, building that cohesiveness, right? The team spirit which is required. It will not be achieved in just one interaction or so, or just in one year. You have to. There are people who work in certain retail outlets for ages together. So you have to, it's a family bonding. End of the day, become a kind of family kind of feeling. How you fend for each other. That thing also needs to be looked into. So for that, you have to create an environment where you are ensuring that people are sharing with you. You're being responsive, but at the same time, you're also meeting, also looking into their development. It's a win-win situation. End of the day, that you have to empathize with your people, as well as look at it from your perspective, looking into your goal setting, looking into your competitiveness in the marketplace in terms of your capabilities. And not only that, you're ensuring that you're engaging with the people in the right manner to understand these kind of changes, these kind of conflicts may come up. These are the collaboration that we are going to have, which will look into. For example, there could be acquisitions. When acquisitions happen, one retailer is acquired by some other, it will lead to lot of chaos. So how the person, which is the company which is acquiring the another one, how are they leveraging that? How, what kind of rules and regulations are they bringing in? How is that being mediated at the people level, employees level? Knowledge setting, of course, this today we are in a market where knowledge rules. So knowledgeable, being knowledgeable about the market conditions, the emerging areas, the products that you should be having, what kind of products you should not be having, what are the things that you should have in your merchandise plan. A lot of these comes from the knowledge management that is there. One is the implicit knowledge and the tacit knowledge. Some people know through experiences, but there is also important that you must understand the current requirements in terms of the knowledge setting that you have as a resource and how it can be managed well. So you need to access various kind of information from the environment, what kind of projects should be taken, now what could be the expansion plans. Now these people will be people who are at the strategic level, who are taking strategic decisions. They have to understand this, and it has to be further becomes critical in terms of meeting the future requirements of the organization, and it has to streamline your successes going forward through effective and optimal utilization of your resources, which also includes people. And it's very very important for the people, because how you organize people, people are the most unpredictable resource, by the way. You cannot predict. You have done all the goods to them, you have told them anything, but how are they going to how are they going to behave? That aspect cannot be can be standardized. It's very different. So all it boils down to is that how you are taking them along, looking, utilizing their knowledge, how you are giving them the right kind of the inputs in terms of acknowledging their capabilities. If you are giving them the ESOPs, let's say there are companies which give ESOPs, so obviously that's kind of works as a motivation. So apart from that, they also look into what can be their contribution. So it's a sum total of the knowledge, skills, and attitude that you are looking at in terms of people management skills. These are the few essential skills. I need not, you can just have a look at it with what we have already just talked about. Most of them have, these are very easily relatable. For example, communication, respect, persuasion, trust, openness, patience, handling customers would be very, very, you need self control. What are you? It may not be important. So people have to understand thoughtfulness, maturity, preparation for the new things, what kind of honesty you are having in terms of dealing with the customers. And we will be having also the feedback mechanism that you're going to have in terms of taking the employees' viewpoints, not only customers' feedback, but also the viewpoints from your people. And then what kind of support you need to give them. If there are new product lines which are coming up, what kind of creativity are you trying to infuse? What kind of new techniques and tools can be done to attract more customers? It can come. So you can have brainstorming sessions within that. You can practice Kaizen, which is basically incremental improvements everywhere. But then everywhere there has to be buy-in from the people at large. Otherwise, it becomes difficult for the people to comprehend what you are trying to say and how they can gear up. And the moment they find there is a disconnect, they would like to even go out of the system. So all these efforts need to be properly managed in terms of effective people management skills. So obviously, the idea is to demonstrate leadership and inclusiveness, communicate, having better coaching, conflict management, all these things will be required to ensure smooth operations and motivating the staff at the same time. So these are few essentials of a people management scenario. Next, we move to the process. What do you mean by the process? For example, you have taken when you buy a as a consumer, you buy place an order on Domino's pizza. What do? You can either pick up a call, you can go to the store, or you can go to the Domino's app and place an order, right? Now, that order, whatever you do, it has to further promises you within a certain period of time it will be there. But if you go and visit or try to take a pack, which is takeaway pack, or you want to eat there, they would ask all these questions. You have to pay for it, wait for the things to happen, and you will find right from the time you enter until you leave, there is a certain process involved or a set of activities which are taken up where which is handled by people. That is why people and processes are so critical. So you have people who have been assigned a particular role for a particular part of that process. So it is like a chain of events. Each event is handled by people who know about that particular aspect only. So if you're placing an order, the order taker would take the order, what kind of order of pizza that you're talking about. Suppose you want a chicken pizza and you're getting a mushroom pizza, which means the order taking has not been happened. So how does it happen? Even after proper execution, you may find that the customer is dissatisfied. So where is the accountability? That can be fixed up. So basically, processes looks into very critically what are the workflows, what kind of operations that you need to do to support the flow of the work, right? So that there is a effective service delivery. Now, for that to happen, you need to have various inventory levels, the checkout, the customer handling, right? As I told you, the order taker has to understand. Secondly, if you are talking about the order taker has taken and if the chef has created in the restaurant, they have created the thing, the packaging has gone wrong. So you are getting a cold pizza instead of a hot pizza, which has been promised, which was given on time, but then you are getting a cold pizza. Then what will happen? So there has to be some checks and balances in terms of the blueprint that you are creating, in terms of what is the sequence of events that you need to, or sequence of steps that should be taken up in terms of reaching out to your customer. So once this pizza is packed, again somebody is involved in transporting physically. It could be rain, summer, or whatever, winter. The point is, you have promised something at a particular period of time, 20 minutes, you have to reach it. So, can you reach that? It could be traffic condition, there could be many various situational factors which can come in between and can create process problems for the customer, the basic various people. Now, when it reaches, are you on time? How has the entire delivery process been? If you remember during the COVID times, non-touch kind of things have been given by Swiggy and Zomato. So the same thing can be looked into. Is that okay? How you can ensure that with minimal kind of physical contact, how this can be given without creating any kind of issues. It should be properly handled. It should be properly in terms of cleanliness, in terms of the way you are deputing the people. How do they interact? Not only that, you must have seen n number of social media reels and all that, where they talk about the last minute conversation between the delivery guy and the consumer is a very critical thing in creating better assessment of what the service is. So here, that is why processes and people go hand in hand. And are these processes reliable? They can be repeated from time to time. And how professional are you? Because we are talking about professionalism in today's organized retail. So if you see a typical retail management process, it is the if you break it down, it will break into various components, right from the word go, when you're talking in terms of how you assess, identify the opportunity, The retailer has to identify that opportunity, which kind of market I want to be, what kind of service I want to be, what kind of cost customers I'm going to interact with, who are the suppliers I'm going to deal with. All these parameters would talk in terms of understanding the environment, the retail environment, and decision to enter. Once you have entered, you also communicate with the people with your retail promotional parameters. So you find you raise certain expectation and you create certain image with respect to your competition. And most of your benchmark processes are worked out. Everywhere you find the processes have to be properly defined and the sequence of events have to be there. If you go down to this level where you're talking about how you are creating an image, when you say creating an image of your value that you're creating, from your merchandise to the kind of products that you are giving, what kind of processes are created. Just now I gave you the example of a Domino's pizza. Everywhere, it is not just one time that you're dealing. Every time with every customer, the same level of professionalism has to be exhibited by the retailer. Now, which is a very difficult thing. So you need somebody who has to monitor these activities, ensure that these are taken care of. For example, if the delivery boy is going through a vehicle, he doesn't have a vehicle. You are asking for a vehicle. If the vehicle breaks down, what does what the person do? It does. It's you need to have stopgap arrangements to take care of that. Even logistics is an important part. We're talking about what kind of support you are giving to the people in order to ensure that the customer is getting on time. When you're looking to your stores, what kind of formats are you? Are you in an online format or an offline format or an omni-channel format? How you integrate and blend all these things? Location, we have talked about the location parameters. Local dynamics is very, very critical. If you're into an offline kind of an engagement, location plays a very important role. And then the layout. If you're trying to create a environment and people are walking into that store, what kind of environment are you creating? Everywhere it has to be proper, processes have to be properly laid out. In terms of pricing, what kind of you cannot for different kind of merchandise you can have different kind of pricing. You can have different sections and departments in the layout. When you are dealing with luxury goods, you have it. Like today in the online setup, Mintra has got luxury products, which is a different cluster altogether. The kind of merchandise that you showcase there is very different from the others. So they are very clear in terms of that, okay, when a customer comes to a luxury segment, he knows that these are the kind of product which could be pitched at a slightly higher price than the others. So you know how to categorize or do category management both in the offline as well as in the online space. I give an example of Mintra, which is an online space. The same thing can also be replicated at the grassroots level in an offline scenario. Looking into promo, I've already talked about the promotional part. What kind of in it today we are looking into the kind of events which are there. What kind of events? When will you have it? When should it come? What are the cultural implications of that? Right? Do our people know about it? Is it an in-store thing, out-store thing? Is it a road show? What is it? Everything needs to be carried. So there's a certain process which you look into the communication strategy that you have to follow for a given period of time. Looking into the HRM and other things, organization development talks in terms of changes. What kind of changes you are talking about? How you can empower your manpower. I talked about the people part just a few minutes ago, where we talked about how you should be selecting. Where will you go and select? What are the parameters? You have to lay down the criteria, selection criteria. That okay, I want refreshers. These are the things I'm looking. If I'm looking to a kind of a experienced person, these are the things. What kind of work they have done in the past? How it can be leveraged over here? How it can be built into their compensation plans? So all these things come together for creating a very robust kind of a HR policy as a process. So if you see, if you break down broadly the entire organization or the retailer firm, it is a sum total of various activities where each activity has to be driven by a particular process which you are creating. Now, why processes are important? The irrespective of people who come and go, the processes should be same, so that anybody who comes and goes, the processes helps in achieving the objectives, right? So it does not create much of hindrances. So what we talk in terms of that, you are talking about the 7 R's. What are the 7 R's? The processes should talk about the right price, the right quantity, the right condition, the right time, the right place, the right customer, and of course, you're looking at the right people who are also delivering the right kind of uh, customer queries, handling customer queries or handling customers, so that you are having a very satisfied customer at the end of your what you are trying to offer. So all these talks in terms of these processes helps you to achieve the ultimate goal that you are promising to the customer when you're saying, okay, I'm looking at West Side, I'm looking into Reliance Retail. These are the takeaways that they are talking about, and that needs to be implemented at the grassroots level. Just saying it does not make things good. We say we are engaging. Starbucks talks about customer experience, but then how the customer experience is going to be a differentiating factor. The Starbucks people have to work on it. If you're talking walking into a jewelry store has to Tanishq has to understand how what goes into a person who's coming to buy jewelry. Carrot Lane will all altogether have a different strategy, but they are maybe managed by the same company, but the kind of engagement that you need to have, the processes that you need to define have to be very different. And each one, the skill sets that is required to handle the people are very, very different. So if you look into a nutshell, we talk about the kind of process, we're looking into a kind of human resource integration in terms of when you are onboarding people, how are you recruiting, how are you selecting, how are you empowering them, how you are training them, how you are setting expectations, and what kind of motivations are you giving so that the employee remain and contribute and play a significant role in the in the service delivery process. Next comes is the customer service. This is again important part. You must have seen that people have a lot of queries. They are buying products which does not work, or they are getting products which may get defective. So how are that's getting, for example, apparels and all that, the size does not fit, or you have been promised something that okay, you can get more, you can have returns. So how are returns being handled by them? Online returns are fine, but the point is when you do the offline kind of returns, does that create more bottlenecks? How you streamline the efforts? Do you have customer care taking care of that particularly activity at a certain point of time in the day? You find customer care looks into product back at a particular period of time. They don't do it throughout the day because at other part of the day they may be expecting more customers to come or buy. So these things have to be calibrated within the system in order to cater to the customer service. Secondly, you have to ensure nowadays, as things are becoming more complicated, as I told you in the VUCA environment, things become more complex. How you're applying technology to support, how you're using analytics to understand inventory levels, how to understand supply chain, how to understand dealing with the vendors. I've talked about how technology can play a very important role in replenishing of the stocks. So all these needs to be look beyond in terms of okay how the logistics have to be managed. What time do we ensure that who's in charge of it? Would you outsource it? Would you have your own investment? All these need to be looked into in terms of processes which are well defined, well articulated, and people are given the right kind of avenues in terms of handling those processes. So just having a warehouse is not important. You must have warehousing store managers or the warehouse managers or the procurement guys who have to ensure inventory levels. So, but what is the demand that is being created every day? That part of the story also has to be. So today we are trying to integrate digitally so that the warehouse guy knows that what is the kind of inventory safety stocks that they need to maintain so that you can provide it on time and looking into your onward logistics parameters, right? So that brings us to the important, when we talk in terms of processes, it definitely beefs up or boosts the efficiency. The idea is to reduce as much risks and errors possible so that the customer end of the day gets a very effective service which they have been promised, right? At times, when your operations, you operate at optimal maybe, but your maximum could be something high. So sometimes during the period, you may have to scale it up So do you have the efficiency to do it? Do you have the effectivity to do it, right? And it is not that it is just, it has to be only with one. It has to be given as a philosophy, and this philosophy has to be articulated in the minds of people so that it can be implemented. So, along with roles and responsibilities and empowerment comes the commitment level, the empathy factor, which people should have. Now, that is very difficult to achieve. But then, everywhere, the customer does not know this. This is the part which is behind the scenes, right? So, your processes and people have to be managed in such a manner so that the customer always feels that wherever I go, whether I walk into a store in Kolkata or in Bhubaneswar or in Mumbai or any part of the globe also, ideally it should be consistent. The quality, service quality standards have to be uh, standardized. But at the same time, here the management has to understand what defines service quality, right? So one has to understand what are the various expectations and the perceptions. So when you see the difference between perceptions minus expectation, that is what is service quality gap. So you have to identify the gap where it exists and then try to plug that. There could be in service management, we talk in terms of five gaps theory. Five gaps theory talks about what is the gap one, gap two, gap three, gap four, which leads to the fifth gap. The fifth gap is talking about what the customers, what the retailer is delivering, or the company is delivering, and what is the recipient is giving. Everywhere you will find that if there is a gap, you can go down to the level of what the customer expectations are. What did you what said that? So, if are your processes well tuned to identify that and bring it into the process and making it happen? Because operationalization happens in the case of processes. How to operationalize? That's where the people have to be involved. That is why I told you both process and people go very critically hand in hand to ensure better service delivery. So many a times you need to have things like transparency and accounting. In today's market, if you're talking about banking sector, you need to have transparency. You need to have, if you're having hidden costs, it builds a lot of, so relationship managers, when they interact, they have a team of people who ensure that, okay, their investment policies are taken care of. But that guidance which comes from the relationship managers, they have to be very transparent with the people. Otherwise, your processes, if I say that, okay, I will hide some costs and I will talk to them at a later stage, it can create a lot of loan applications. Okay, while giving loans, you are giving, but while you are taking back the money, you are trying to add few other points. So was that particular thing told to the people right from beginning? So in services, again, lot many things can go or may not be aware of them. So you need to also ensure that the customer is aware of them when they're signing on the dotted paper. Are they aware of the things? So there has to be transparency, accountability, and also empathy from the. So your processes have to have checks and balances in place so that you are updating or creating information with your customers. A simplified place of processes would be you plan for that. You might have to understand what is the financial planning or merchandise planning that you have to do, and accordingly you assess the demand of the customer and look into what you buy. It's a very simplified model of a process, and you buy at a particular rate. Then you get into negotiations with your vendors, and then you move them across the supply chain, your or where putting it to your warehouses and supply to the market. For the market to know that you have those inventories, you have to have a very effective communication strategy in terms of brand management or product launches so as to inform the people so that they can come to those places for those retail outlets where your retail outlets are. And then, of course, the last but not the least is the selling activity that needs to be taken care of by the sales professionals at the stores. So it's a very simplified model of a process, but yes, there are a lot many intervening areas that needs to be done. So if you look at the visual representation, there are structure steps which is used right from stocking, billing, complaint rehandling. Each of these steps have areas of where they can, okay, not only assessing needs, what could be the stocks I should have, how do I bill them, how to make it available, are the logistic parameters, if there are complaints, how that complaint has to be redressed by the provider, so that the customer is happy with the kind of customer redressal strategies. Can you add value? Yes, you can add value, and by identifying wastages, which can be cut down to the minimum. That is the idea, that when you make your processes, you make it so routinized, so critical, so it's almost like a well-oiled machine which works towards giving you better leverage in terms of your achievement of your goals. As I've told you before, for these two retail mix to happen, we need an interlink between people and process. People execute and improve processes. They are very much ingrained in the process, because people, until unless they have a control over the processes, they cannot deliver the service to the customers. So there has to be a very, and today we are talking in terms of technology interventions, which ensures that you have a better coordination between both people and processes in order to reach out to the customers. The idea is to lower your costs and increase the service quality. Just now I was talking about the service quality. If you routinize it, if you make it more conversant with the people, you'll find that the cost over a period of time comes down. So you achieve economies of scale in terms of operations, and also you deal with larger amount of, so it becomes more smoother. And if you are able to meet the customer expectation, your service quality is also maintained. Better employee management and productivity for well-managed processes, and the people, organizations which follow best practices. They look into how do they engage with their employees. Just now I told you, creating a more desired place to work, looking into what their requirements are, because they are your internal customers. People who are working with you, your manpower, are your employees are your internal customers. If they are happy, they will pass on this, they will get involved in the process of the service delivery to the end user, and their productivity can be enhanced, and which will ultimately will basically look into the higher customer satisfaction and loyalty. Now, going to this, if you look into this, let's say typical retail formats where different kind of stages are there at a customer stage. If there's something like a customer request comes for a some kind of a sales issue, you have to identify where the point is, and then take that issue and put it over to that particular point. So today, when you talk about software application protocols, softwares are developed to help that, okay, if there's a customer query coming in terms of a grievance or whatever, how it needs to be channelized, and which are the departments who need to be involved in it. Is it the tech support? Is it sales? What is it? And then does it really get resolved at that level? If it gets resolved, are you confirming with the customer? And then that is finished, right? You need more feedback. If there's still an error, if there's a technical analysis, then you have to again engage with the customer. Now, steps have to be taken for each of them, and processes have to be well defined in terms of engaging with the customer, informing them, which I was talking about, the transparency parameter. How transparent are you about your things? Then you must have seen in your car, when you go to the after, you go with a particular problem and you find that there are many associated problems. In that case, what happens? You should be able to convince your customers that, okay, what are the problems that you're facing, or you want to. Now, everywhere the issues have to be resolved according to the satisfaction of the customers. There are times when you would say that my car is having this kind of a problem, I can live with it. But then that's a call that the customer has to take. It's your duty also to tell your customers that, okay, going with this problem, going forward, if you have issue, if your issue is getting resolved today on a minor issue, it can lead to a larger issue going forward. So what are you doing to basically resolve the issue in the long term, so that the customer feels that it is something which is beneficial to them, and they see value in your suggestion, so they may accept it. But it again depends upon how you are engaging with the people. So here people play a very important role in engaging with the end customers. So to summarize things, retail success, in today's session we looked at how we can have retail success, look into two important retail mix elements of people and processes, right? People bring customer experiences, and the processes ensure that it is repeated or its consistency is there wherever you go and whenever you go. How many times you go, maybe the same kind of engagement can be experienced. So, as retailers, as firms, organization, it's important to invest in both having the right kind of people mix along with the processes, which is needs to be flexible. It need not be rigid, so that your long-term goals of growth can be achieved. And today it's very important point as we look into the future growth of retail sector in India. With this, we end today's session. Thank you for your patient hearing.